Hey everyone, this is Noah here. So as a bit of a heads up, this is actually an older video of mine recorded back in 2024, actually not long after my Japan trip that I took. During that trip, I actually got to see a lot of the different locations that are featured in Steins Gate, such as the radio building in Akihabara. Steins Gate is my personal favorite anime, and also an anime I found has a lot to relate to as an autistic person, and I know a lot of other autistic people who like this anime as well. However, since I released this video back in 2024, it's had trouble staying open to the public since Kadokawa, the company that distributes the Steins Gate anime, keeps claiming the clips from this video. Oh, and apparently also Disney is now claiming this video as well. The mouse jumped right on top of that. But fortunately, now with this new re-upload, I finally seem to have figured out a way to keep this video visible to everyone so they can all enjoy it, and also just listen to me geeking out over what is my personal favorite anime of all time. I hope you enjoy me discussing Steins Gate, which I find to be a very deep and very interesting anime, and also probably one of the best science fiction things that I've ever experienced, especially since a lot of it is hard science fiction, meaning it draws from actual real science, and also how much of this anime really translates pretty well to the autistic experience. First, are you, like me, very wary of how expensive gaming has gotten as a hobby now? I recently just spent over $200 pre-ordering the new Ninja Turtles game, the new Star Fox game that's finally coming out, which I'm very glad Star Fox is finally getting a big return, and also buying several other games for both my Switch and PS5. It seems now that gaming is the biggest and most lucrative entertainment industry in the world, eclipsing both the music and movie industries combined, it's also, of course, gotten a lot more expensive to properly indulge in over the years. If only there was one singular place where you could find all the best deals on your favorite games and also all the best deals on DLC and add-ons for those games as well. Well, look no further than Aniba, the sponsor of today's video. Aniba is the world's biggest gaming marketplace where you can find tons of different discounts for your favorite games on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. You can also get great deals on DLC and in-game content for those games as well. I ended up being able to actually snag some great deals on Sonic Racing Cross Worlds DLC from this site, which is definitely a game I've been enjoying a lot in my off time. Aniba is a really reliable source for getting all kinds of great deals for your favorite games on multiple different platforms. If you ever need any assistance from Aniba as well, their 24-hour live support team is always there to have your back. Don't wait at all to get in on some of the greatest deals in gaming. Check out Aniba through the link in the description. If you're wanting to get some of the best deals in gaming, especially in today's economy, Aniba is certainly the way to go. Once again, check out Aniba through the link in the description, and also in the pinned comment. But with all that out of the way, let's get into discussing Steins Gate, my personal favorite anime of all time.
You're not where you want to be. You feel like you're supposed to be somewhere else. Say you could snap your fingers and be wherever you wanted to be. I bet you'd still feel this way, not in the right place. The point is, you can't get so hung up on where you'd rather be that you forget how to make the most of where you are.
Early on, I went through quite a bit of that, but I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I guess if your heart is in it and you just keep persevering, you're gonna break through it.
If you had it to do over again, would you do any part of it differently?
Well, if I had it to do over again, I think, no, I don't think I would. I don't know. I hope I don't have to do it over again.
Have you ever thought back to something from the past in your life? A failure, or a regret of some sort, or just something you simply would like to have changed with the foresight you have in the present? Do you wonder if your choices made in the past, even small ones, could have altered your future in some way? Perhaps you would have ended up at a different destination in the present day by doing something different in the past. Of course, with these types of theories, you would probably be thinking along the line of something known as the grandfather paradox, which is a theory of time travel. Time travel is a relatively consistent feature of science fiction, since, technically, a lot of the theories in time travel are rooted in science as is. However, time travel is such a difficult thing to introduce to a story, due to how many plot holes can easily open up from it, and how it can easily create convolutedness. It is so easy for storytelling to fall into this trap, and many pieces of media ultimately do. However, there is one piece of media that, against all odds, defies every perceived notion of time travel storytelling, and rises above the rest to become not just the greatest time travel story ever, but what I consider to be the greatest single anime ever. I am, of course, talking about none other than Steins Gate,
the perennial classic from 2011. Steins Gate is one of those anime that seems to be able to appeal to audiences outside of traditional anime watchers even, in the vein of shows such as the acclaimed Cowboy Bebop, which also has reached beyond the borders of traditional anime. In fact, Steins Gate is the only anime I happen to own on Blu-ray. But why is this? What is it about this show that allows it to resonate with so many people on such a deep level? What philosophies and deeper inner workings could possibly be strung throughout a show where a microwave and a cell phone transform into a time machine? Well, strap in and fire out some D-mails, since before we can properly answer that, we need to look back at some production history. This video will obviously be a much longer one than you usually see from me, so I'll be putting time codes for each chapter down below in the description. The first part of this video will be spoiler free, but at some point I will have to dive into spoiler territory when discussing the narrative in depth, so that point will be marked in the description via timecode as well. Also, due to this video's length, I am definitely putting myself at more of a risk for copyright, which, of course, I fought a lot with during my Tron Legacy video thanks to Disney. There may be various effects that you have to utilize to alleviate this, so if so, just a heads up. Also, if you'd like to see more long-form videos like this, since they naturally take way longer to put out, get this video to 45 likes, so I can be sure this is something you guys would want to see more of. But to start, let's discuss how this show came to be. Our story starts back in 2009, when the Xbox 360 was leading the HD console market. Games like Batman Arkham City, Wet, Plants vs. Zombies, Left 4 Dead 2, and more were releasing to critical and commercial success. 5PB Games was looking to create a visual novel for the system to follow their previous work called Chaos Head. They want to craft a game with a concept that was 99% science and 1% fantasy. As scenario writer and lead designer, Nayotake Hayashi put it. The main character designer for Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 4 was brought on to create the look of its aesthetic and characters, that being Ryo Fuke, evoking that sort of sci-fi futuristic feel the developers were wanting to strive for. The title, Steins Gate, was inspired by the German word for stone, that being Stein. It was also based on a loose reference to the renowned physicist Albert Einstein. Eventually, the game released on the Xbox 360 Live Arcade as a Japanese exclusive title, to rave reviews from several different publications, including even notoriously critical magazine Famitsu, who went as far to give it their Game of Excellence award, which is only bestowed upon one game a year. Even Square Enix producer Tomoya Asano took notice of the game's strong writing and wound up recruiting Nayotaka Hayashi to be the lead scenario writer for Bravely Default, which entered production for the 3DS not long after Steins Gate released. There was enough widespread critical acclaim for the visual novel that, on July 25th, 2010, developers took to Twitter to announce that Steins Gate had been picked up for an anime adaptation by White Fox Studio. The anime aired its first episode on April 6, 2011, and it ran until September 14th. This adaptation, much like the game, received widespread acclaim, but here, it was on an even larger scale. To this very day, Steins Gate maintains its spot amongst the top 3 most highly rated anime on my anime list, and considering its unconventional nature, that is incredibly impressive. Steins Gate is a unique anomaly in the greater pantheon of legendary anime, as it doesn't really have any traditional anime tropes. None of the main characters wield any special power, nor are they isekai to any fantasy realm. They are just normal people who happen to get wrapped up in very abnormal circumstances by the means of technological experimentation. The show is deeply steeped in a unique pocket of time, that being the time the visual novel was released, the late 2000s. The main characters are all nerds, hunting down whatever they can consider prized possessions, like CRTs, an IBM 5100 PC even, and communicate via flip phones and early internet forums. In many ways, this show has a nostalgic sense to it, since many of the devices and objects prominently featured in the series are, by definition, outdated in the modern age, but hold a strange sort of fondness to those who are old enough to remember them, like me. The Xbox 360 is 20 years old, Jesus Christ. This is a very specific pocket of time to cover in an anime, no less, and in many ways, this makes it function as a period piece. But also, due to its unconventional nature, it is wild to consider one of the greatest anime of all time, when it doesn't even really have that many traditional anime tropes to begin with. It's very much akin to something like Cowboy Bebop in that sense, and truly in a league of its own. To explain exactly why this show is held in such high regard, much like my Tron Legacy video, I'll have to break this show down bit by bit, beat by beat. To start, let's discuss the characters involved in this particular show, What makes them so great in particular? First up is the show's main protagonist, Okabe Rintrou. Okabe is one of the most unique anime protagonists out there, since he's honestly just incredibly hard to read. He is a conspiracy theorist that believes himself to be the only one that can detect anomalies in space-time, which he calls the gift of Steiner, so pretty much like all conspiracy theorists. He refers to himself as Hoin Hyoma even, the branding of a mad scientist that he claims to secretly be, and hosts a secret lab in an apartment in Akihabara with a few friends as lab members. The thing that sets Okabe apart, however, is that he doesn't really appear to totally believe in the crazy theories he discusses, nor does he really seem to believe he's Hoin Kyoma. This is just a facade he's putting on, a larger-than-life personality trait to cover up insecurities and inner demons he faces on a daily basis. This is something I'll discuss in greater detail as we dive into individual episodes of the show and various plot lines later, but keep it in mind for now, as it is crucial to understanding his character and really much of the show overall. The next major player in this time travel tale is Makise Kurisu, who ends up being Okabe's partner in crime. Kurisu is often identified trope-wise by most anime fans as a tsundere, which for those unaware is essentially a character trait where a character, most often female, switches from being tough and bearing a cold exterior towards a love interest to being open and sweet. This is especially true considering her and Okabe himself, as we'll discuss the specifics of that development later on, but one thing of interesting note here is that Okabe specifically calls her this too. The classic trope is often frequently used by Okabe when referring to Kurisu, with him constantly trolling her by doing so. Kurisu is the perfect foil for Okabe to start out, since they both are incredibly smart and well versed in the theories of time travel, but of course, the way she handles herself is much less eccentric than Okabe. This is, of course, the perfect plot setup to allow the two to bounce off of each other and bicker, but ultimately realize they need one another to get where they want ultimately. The last main character I'm gonna distinctly discuss for now, at least, is Mayuri, a sweet, kind girl that's a companion to Okabe and his nonsensical schemes. She honestly seems like the only character that Okabe will truly lower his mad scientist persona for at the show's start. While he does keep it large and pervasive around literally everyone else, for her at least, he seems to lower it on a few different occasions. Mayuri herself isn't particularly a conspiracy nut or weeb like Okabe, but she sticks by him regardless because she does genuinely care for his well-being and appears to like him as a person. Or at least she likes him enough to put up with his mad ramblings about the evil organization CERN and the Mark of Steiner. With the three arguably most important members of the cast out of the way now, at least on a surface level, let's begin diving into each individual episode of the show, and flesh out what makes this overarching plot so perfect and what each episode does to contribute to that. Of course, that does mean massive spoiler warning, so if you haven't watched the show yet and you don't want the entirety of it spoiled for you right here and now, this is your last chance to back out. Without further ado, let's dive into episode 1. The show opens with a shot of several different telephone lines, which already is somehow a deeper analogy. The telephone lines are meant to represent various world lines, or alternate timelines, that branch off of each other but ultimately start at the same place and have the same source. The show is already like this from the get-go with its symbolism, so even just with the opening shot, they're already showcasing that. It's throughout the whole show, ultimately. We hear a narration discussing the finite state of the universe, along with how scientists make poor poets, along with other things that make for a jarring introduction. The camera pans back and we see the narration is coming from Okabe himself, speaking out loud to a phone, which doesn't even have anyone on the other end. He is quite literally speaking to an audience of 0. This, in my opinion, is one of the greatest character introductions put to screen, as wild as that may sound. To compare a little bit and explain this further, let's take a look at a similar character introduction, that being the introduction to Jack Sparrow we see in Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. Jack arrives at Port Royal looking triumphant and swashbuckling, as any pirate should, and even taking the time to pay respects to his fellow pirates that should have died for the cause. However, when the camera pans out, there is that oh-so-iconic shot of his ship literally sinking as he arrives at the port, only for him to step onto the dock as if he'd planned the whole thing, which you could argue he did. This is a perfect character introduction. In one fell swoop, we are taught everything we need to know about Jack. He is competent, but appears to make things up as he goes. He's incredibly unpredictable, but somehow always seems to know exactly what he's doing. He's a loser, but also a winner. In the same way, this intro to the first episode of Steins is the perfect intro to a character like Okabe. We hear a ton of profound sounding dialogue being discussed as the camera pans through a series of phone lines, only for that dialogue to be revealed to be coming from a strange, scrawny man in a lab coat, standing on top of an apartment building, talking on a phone to nobody. This is brilliant, and again, it tells you everything you need to know about Okabe in one fell swoop. He does appear to be intelligent, but also completely paranoid and possibly insane. But he has to have some semblance of his mind if he's able to make analogies like that actually make sense, like comparing timelines to phone lines. This is precisely how you do a character introduction in anything, really. It's something that I honestly appreciate more and more every time I rewatch this show. After this brilliant introduction, however, we are immediately greeted by another character, the aforementioned Mayuri. She calls out cheerfully to Okabe using her playful nickname for him, Okari, and beckons for him to follow her. Okari seems reluctant to do so, but they both walk off together and eventually make their way to a conference where Okabe explains to Mayuri there will be a presentation on time travel and a working time machine prototype from Dr. Nakabachi. Okabe wants to infiltrate this presentation to try and disrupt the evil organization CERN, which, again, feeds into that paranoid conspiracy nut vibe all the more. The reason Okabe was reluctant to take Mayuri along on this crazy exposing escapade of his becomes clear as they discuss time travel together. Mayuri just simply is not anything like Okabe, whereas he is incredibly eccentric, easily offended, and wildly paranoid. She is calm, cheerful, and sweet. They are polar opposites, but I guess opposites do attract, somehow. During their discussion, however, a giant crash is heard from the top of the conference building. Okabe immediately goes to investigate, but upon peering out the door to the roof, he only sees a strange person in a hat, shooing him away, but from the looks of it. Before he can investigate any further, however, he receives a text from Mayuri, telling him to meet her downstairs. Mayuri has located a toy dispenser and sees a trinket she wants, but lacks any funds for said trinket. Okabe begrudgingly provides her with a coin to use, and she gets the shiny toy she wanted. We then jump to Okabe infiltrating Nakabachi's lecture on time travel, in which he immediately jumps up and objects in a hilariously dramatic way to what is being said. However wild this interruption is, and while our minds do question who exactly John Teeter is, it does seem to unnerve the speaker, leading to aroused suspicion amongst the crowd, who mutter amongst themselves whether this theory really was plagiarized or not. But before Okabe can interject even more, a strange girl pulls him aside out of the blue. Here's where we learn this identity of said girl, which I said at the beginning of this video, of course, is Kurisu. Kurisu appears to recognize that Okabe is, well, cracked, but she appears to think he was speaking to her 15 minutes ago. She claims just before the conference, she encountered Okabe, who was trying to tell her something vitally important in desperation. Okabe is bewildered naturally, but decides Kurisu is just an agent of the organization, he calls it, and flees the scene cackling madly. Ah yes, and she's the crazy one, eh, Okabe? Right, that makes sense. After this, Okabe rendezvous with Mayuri, who tells him she lost her toy and is attempting to relocate it since it's worth 10,000 yen. Okabe immediately does a 360 from earlier and urges her to find it so he can sell it for his scientific pursuits. Ah yes, ever the selfless one, Okabe, selling a little girl's toy for 10,000 yen, which is like, what, $64 in US? I don't think you even buy a new video game for that much nowadays.
I know guys with none of that worth 10 of you. The only thing you really fight for is yourself.
But none of that seems to matter right now, as a sudden blood-curdling scream is heard erupting from the halls of the building. Shocked and disturbed, Okabe runs upstairs to investigate, and his search leads him to a small closet where, upon looking inside, he sees Makase Kurisu, the woman he saw only moments before, lying dead on the ground in a pool of her own blood. He is frozen in shock since it's the same woman he just saw under 10 minutes prior. He panics and flees from the building, hopping outside to pant in exasperation. Not knowing what to do, he sends a text to his friend Daru, who's back at the secret lab, about what has happened. Without knowing it, in one instant, in one simple press of a keypad, his entire reality and fate is shifted in a single moment. A strange flash of light appears around him, and suddenly the crowd surrounding him disappears. He panics once again and frantically runs street to street, trying to make sense of what has happened when he hears "Toot-a-roo!" Despite everyone else vanishing for whatever reason, it seems Mayuri is still safe and sound, justice for our girl. Okabe frantically asks if she saw all the people disappear as well, but she doesn't even seem to have any memory of anyone being on the street whatsoever. Perplexed and bewildered, Okabe decides to try and retrace his steps, and chooses to return to the secret lab, where we are introduced to Daru properly, who Okabe refers to as his hack, busy typing away, working on keeping tabs on a strange satellite crash that appears to have occurred within the Akihabara district by Okabe's demand. In the meantime, Okabe decides to test out a project he has been working on, simply known as the phone wave, which is literally just a phone linked to a microwave. His idea is to put a bunch of bananas inside that Mayuri bot and activate the microwave via electronic waves emitted from his phone to see if anything in particular will happen to the bananas. Unfortunately, all that appears to happen is the bananas turning into a pile of green goo. Apparently, this experiment has been attempted many a time before, with largely the same result every time. Huh, what a coincidence.
But as one trained in the Force, you know that true coincidences are rare.
With this failure of an experiment having occurred, Okabe is disappointed, but not enough to force Daru to come with him to a nearby college to attend yet another presentation on time travel, to investigate more about Dr. Nakabachi's writings being potentially plagiarized from John Teeter. Daru takes out his phone and begins browsing around as he and Okabe ride the elevator up to the presentation hall. Okabe then has a sudden realization. He can just simply look at Daru's phone to look for the text he sent about Makase Kurisu earlier that day to see exactly what could have happened to cause everyone on the street to simply vanish. However, Daru tells him something incredibly unexpected. His text was set 5 days ago instead of today. Okabe is bewildered and upon searching Daru's previous texts, find this to be true. His texts to Daru is dated July 23rd, and today is the 28th. His text has somehow traveled back 5 days in time.
What?
This revelation is met with yet another shocking turn of events, since as Daru and Okabe arrive at their floor, the elevator doors open and standing right in front of Okabe is Makase Kurisu, the woman he just saw stabbed a few hours prior. She is alive and well with not a scratch on her. Going from the fact his text time traveled to the reveal that Kurisu is still alive somehow is a wild sense of narrative whiplash, and this is actually where the first episode ends. This is a fantastic way to hook the viewer into the show, what it is offering in terms of its story, and I absolutely love it. A common complaint about Steins Gate is that it's too slow at the start, but honestly I find this first episode alone to already offer so much. There's a compelling mystery to be solved about how Okabe's text traveled through time, and what exactly that means, as well as the dual mystery of how Makase Kurisu is alive after being found dead in a closet. If anything, to me, this show already starts with a bang in the first episode alone. Okabe is shocked to see Kurisu standing directly in front of him and immediately assumes she's a zombie. Kurisu is shocked and rightfully startled at the sight of a strange lanky man in a lab coat poking at her and asking if she's a zombie. However, before Okabe can question her any further, Kurisu is called away to begin her lecture. Okabe and Daru obviously were planning on attending this lecture anyway, but Okabe is now shaken finding out the woman he just saw murdered under 3 hours ago is now hosting this exact lecture he's attending. As it turns out, Kurisu's lecture just so happens to be on how time travel is not possible, much to Okabe's chagrin. Okabe attempts to argue it is possible in an open forum debate with Kurisu, but he is ultimately turned away by her superior ability with verbiage and wording. Admitting defeat, he goes to meet with Mayuri at the local Japanese shrine, where we are introduced to yet another major character in the overall story of the show, that being Ruka, Mayuri's friend who works at the shrine as an exorcist. Ruka is a kind and gentle soul who actually has a very clear crush on Okabe, and he apparently does appear to realize this. Of course, he's too wrapped up in his scientific pursuits to tend to their personal affections for him. Ruka explains they have had many leftover husks of corn they don't want to go to waste, so they give it to Okabe for a secret lab to feed other members and raise morale. Obviously, one notable thing about Ruka is their sweet, kind, feminine nature, but as Okabe claims,
Ruka is a dude.
With their corn husks acquired, Mayuri and Okabe return to the lab for the evening, and Okabe begins to do some more research concerning John Teeter. However, upon digging deeper, he uncovers a startling truth. Somehow all records of John Teeter have been erased from the internet. This is shocking because, as Okabe says, Teeter was a widely reported upon figure in the year 2000, since he began popping up on internet forums around that time, claiming to be a time traveler from the year 2036. But now it's as though nobody has even heard of him. Okabe is perplexed by yet another bizarre circumstance, and decides he needs to talk to Daru about some of this. He arranges to meet Daru at a maid cafe the following day. However, while on the way there, a strange woman crosses his path, and for some reason begins taking pictures of him and the street around him on her flip phone. Totally not creepy at all. Okabe demands an explanation from this stranger, but she doesn't really give one. She seems completely lost in her own zone. Out of the blue, she shows Okabe a picture of an old PC, which he can't quite identify. She asks him if he knows anyone who knows about the PC, and he tells her he'll ask Daru, since he is meeting him at the maid cafe anyway. The woman tells her name is Moeka, and they exchange contact info to share information on the PC. With that random excursion out of the way, Okabe arrives at that cafe, where we are introduced to yet another major character in this tale, that being Ferris, one of the main maids who works at this cafe, and also happens to be friends with Mayuri, as well as the current object of Daru's eye, or one of many, really.
Watch it. I can't allow you to talk about my girl that way.
Strong words for a Don Juan. Your precious harem know you're here?
Nice try, Chief. It doesn't count if I fool around on him with a flesh and blood woman.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the...
I was unaware, in Japanese culture, maid cafes are more or less experiences that are meant to make their user feel as though they've been transported to a different world or realm, and are often served by maids in a private manner, usually themed after a particular facet of otaku culture. However, traditionally maids are given a very strict set of rules and are not allowed to date or make any physical contact with customers beyond high-fiving or handshakes. In addition, maid cafes are actually sometimes frowned upon to visit, at least for locals from my gathering, which explains why Daru is in such a cranky mood. Ayo, got him! In general though, maid cafes are a pretty popular tourist spot in Japan, so they are encouraged for visitors. This is purely going off of what I have gathered via my research, so if I missed something regarding this, feel free to tell me in the comments. I'm also visiting Japan in August for the first time ever, so I imagine I'll find out in person myself. And yes, I will be making content while there, so stay tuned for that. Going back to the main story, however, Okabe shows Daru the picture of the PC he was given by Moeka, to which Daru does a double take, saying it's an incredibly rare IBM 5100, a retro PC as he puts it. This is actually a perfect segue to dive into something I want to discuss regarding Steins Gate's entire setting and theming as a whole, that being the theme of nostalgia. As I stated before, Steins Gate is very squarely set in the late 2000s. It contains many motifs from that particular pocket of time, and plenty before that even. In recent years, nostalgia has become an ever-present fixation of popular culture, with retro gaming more popular than ever. Plenty of films choosing to revisit or reboot past ideas, and TV shows also taking the same route. A quote from Renata Suzuki sums up the core idea of nostalgia very well, saying, "Nostalgia is the heart's way of reminding you of something you once loved. It travels in many forms, on a song, in a scent, or in photographs, but no matter how it comes to you, you will always have the same bittersweet taste." Steins Gate showcases both sides of nostalgia. One is a comforting feeling and a longing back to better days. Also something that can be easily damaging to one's personality and mentality if not kept in check. It shows both the good and bad sides of such a concept, and strangely enough, this happens to tie it back into this particular retro PC Okabe has been informed about just now. This theme of looking to the past to try and create a new scenario or mentality in the present will also come up later, so keep it in mind for now. For the time being, Okabe tells Moeka her PC is rare, and it's nowhere to be found. He and Daru return to the lab and for some reason begin tackling the same experiment as before with just a new twist. Instead of putting in the whole bunch of bananas, they insert only one. Daru runs the microwave the same as before, but for some reason this result is different. Instead of turning into goo, the banana rejoins the rest of bananas as the bunch and then becomes green goo. This perplexes both Daru and Okabe, and all of a sudden, in this mind-shattering moment, an intruder enters the lab. Makase Kurisu is here to see what Okabe has been up to. As it turns out, Okabe's words about him being shocked she was alive seem to have rung a chord with her, at least enough so for her to pay him a visit. And with the revelation that Daru and Okabe have stumbled upon a particularly peculiar brand of science within their microwave, she is now all the more intrigued by what might be going on in this lab. She asks Okabe if she can assist him and Daru in trying to figure out what exactly is causing the green goopy nature of the bananas. Okabe begrudgingly relents, but gives Kurisu a specific condition to be allowed to examine the microwave. She must join Okabe's secret lab as lab member 004. Kurisu obliges, and she, Daru, and Okabe began exhibiting the microwave to see exactly what caused it to behave this way when bananas were inserted. Unbeknownst to them, however, Mayuri has just arrived back from some errands grabbing some chicken tenders. Upon seeing another girl as a lab member, she's incredibly excited since, as she puts it, there has not been a female member of the lab ever apart from her. Daru tells Okabe that he received the text from Okabe last week about Makase Kurisu being murdered. He had actually had his phone hooked up to the microwave to continue testing things as before during when this happened. Okabe thinks about this and decides the need to try and recreate those same conditions. He links up his phone to the microwave and has Mayuri put her chicken tenders in the microwave. He starts the heating cycle in the microwave, and Daru sends a text to his phone, but all of a sudden Mayuri decides to take out her chicken tenders. Okabe attempts to stop her, but it's too late and the microwave creates a mini explosion, blowing a hole in the floor of the lab. Amidst the chaos, Okabe does happen to look at his phone, and sure enough, the text has sent 4 days into the past, an eerily similar situation to what happened before, and now the source is clear. The lab microwave somehow is a time machine. Before going any further, it would be wise to showcase specifically what type of time travel Steins Gate contains in its narrative. In the world of Steins Gate, when someone travels back in time and alters events from the past, this doesn't just create one specific altered streamlined future, like most media tend to portray. Rather, this creates many branching parallel timelines, with various changes to each due to the altering of the past. These are called world lines in the show and represent a sort of rippling butterfly effect. To explain this more fully, let's compare this to X-Men Days of Future Past, Fox's big X-Men film from 2014. In that movie, Wolverine is sent back to 1973 to prevent Mystique from shooting Bolivar Trask and, as a result, prevent the Sentinels from being created and devastating the human population. So essentially, we have one big streamlined timeline. Wolverine goes back in time, Trask isn't killed, and a new future is written for the X-Men, where they all live out peacefully in Professor X's school. Assuming this isn't altered by Disney, but that movie isn't out yet as of me recording this, so we'll see. If we apply Steins Gate's version of time travel to something like that, however, it would look more like Wolverine going back in time and preventing Trask's death, but in doing so creating a split from that point in time, and resulting in many different world lines being born. This is key to the story structure of the show, so keep it in mind for now. Going back to our plot, it does look like the lab's microwave is somehow a working time machine. Kurisu is in disbelief, since at her lecture earlier, of course, she thought she had disproved time travel was even possible, and she runs straight out of the lab. Mayuri goes to get more chicken tenders since the explosion burned hers, so Daru and Okabe are left alone. Daru mentions to Okabe that John Titor has been subtly resurging on the internet in addition to the already strange things that have occurred today. Titor apparently has been saying that an organization known as CERN has a monopoly on time machines in the time he spawns from. As it turns out, CERN is around in the present day currently and is the home of a giant hadron collider. Okabe puts 2 and 2 together and gives Daru a seemingly impossible task: hack into CERN's databases and pull as much information on CERN's time travel program as he can in order to aid the lab's pursuit of figuring out how to harness the time-traveling energy of the phone wave. After a bit of hacking, Daru uncovers that CERN actually has had success with time travel experiments, but lied in public forums claiming their experiments failed. It also turns out at least one casualty occurred with the workers at CERN's labs, but this wasn't ever reported on openly either. After considering this, Okabe decides to continue to investigate CERN's records, but finds there's proprietary code that appears unhackable. Okabe recalls something earlier that he discovered reading John Titor's writings, that the IBN 5100 is actually key to stopping CERN's plans for domination over time travel. He decides to pay a visit to his landlord, Mr. Braun, who just so happens to run a retro tech shop. Mr. Braun's a tough, protective man who does appear to show a softer side for his daughter, however, and also the female characters we've met so far, like Mayuri and Kurisu. As it turns out, one of our other new major characters to tie into this tale is none other than Mr. Braun's intern, Suzuha Oname. Despite being a new intern, Suzuha appears to have an uncanny amount of knowledge on retro technology and lets him know she heard IBM computers cannot read proprietary code. Okabe realizes this is why he exactly needs the IBM 5100. He asks Suzuha if she knows where he can find one, and she tells him Mayuri told her Ferris actually happens to have one. Okabe makes his way to the maid cafe where Ferris works, and she tells him she knows about the PC, but she won't tell him unless he plays against her in a board game to entertain the crowd. He does, and loses pretty badly, but he has still played with her, so she gives him the info he needs. Apparently the PC is actually being held at Ruka's shrine, since their dad apparently is in possession of one. Okabe goes down to the shrine and, by coincidence, happens to meet up with Kurisu. She is reluctant to accept the idea of time travel being real, but she chooses to aid him in bringing the PC back to the lab. From there, they're able to use the PC to dig into CERN's files and uncover the information they need. As it turns out, while this now cracked file gives them the info they need to really move forward with testing and time travel with the phone wave, it also reveals that CERN had many casualties from various employees during the testing processes, with the employees' flesh becoming green goop, much like the bananas Okabe has been testing. This is ominous foreshadowing, and it makes Daru hesitant to go forward, considering what they are messing with here. Okabe is determined to keep going with time travel though, and so they do. After calling lab work a day, Okabe decides to take a rest, but is interrupted by Moeka texting him randomly saying she's coming upstairs to the lab. Okabe greets her at the door, and she asks if she can look at the IBN 5100. Okabe is surprised by this seemingly random request, but obliges. She asks if she can borrow it, but Okabe declines to this, saying he has it on loan from Luca's shrine. Moeka persists on asking for more details though, so eventually he just simply tells her about the time travel machine and makes her lab member 005 in order to keep her from spreading this information outside the lab. Okabe then decides to conduct his first time travel experiment, now having all the necessary components. He finds a lottery website and looks at all the winning numbers from a week ago. He decides to send his past self these winning numbers, and when he does, he feels a strange sensation. He suddenly arrives at a time an hour earlier, and sure enough, he has the winning number. After witnessing this, Moeka requests to send a D-mail herself. She claims she wants to send herself a text in the past, telling herself not to buy the cell phone she currently has. Okabe lets her do this, and the same thing happens. He has a strange sensation and the world seems to shift around him. Only this time, the changes seem much more drastic, since upon asking the other lab members, none of them remember Moeka. Okabe realizes that sending the D-mails in combination with the microwave more or less sends him to a different world line, and for some reason, only he can retain the memories of the previous world line, since he still remembers Moeka. Not long after, Luca ends up approaching Okabe with a request of their own. Since they are born into a male body, they want to send a text to their mother in the past, telling her to eat lots of vegetables. They are being led by a tip they heard stating if a mother eats lots of meat before birth, they will conceive a boy. If they eat a lot of vegetables, they will have a girl. Luca wants to send a text to their mother as a result, telling them to eat lots of vegetables so they'll end up in a female body. Okabe lets Luca do this, and he undergoes the same throbbing flash he encountered before. However, upon ending up in the world line where Luca's mom was told to eat lots of vegetables before pregnancy, nothing appears to have occurred much, at least not right away. Soon after this, Ferris happens to overhear Okabe discussing the ability they now have to time travel. After learning of the group's ability to send D-mails, Ferris becomes intrigued. After speaking to Okabe, she convinces him to let her send a D-mail as well, although Okabe is admittedly wary of this idea, having noted how the changes to each world line seem to differ more greatly than the last every time they send one. Ferris won't tell Okabe what message she wants to send, which admittedly is pretty worrying as well, and much to his chagrin, but he lets her send it, and suddenly another flash appears, and he snaps out of it, his head throbbing once again. He is in the same room Ferris sent her D-mail in, but standing in front of him is none other than Ferris's dad, who, until this point, he had never even met before. Supposedly, it was Ferris's family who was responsible for transforming Akihabara into the otaku-infested nerd paradise it typically is, but for some reason, until landing this world line, Okabe had never even met Ferris's dad, nor heard much mention of him. And after leaving her apartment, it becomes clear this last email has created even more drastic changes. As it turns out, Akihabara in this world line is no longer the nerd hub it once was known to be, and has devolved into a traditional, typical Japanese shopping district. No! For those who don't know, although if you're watching this video, you likely do, but just in case, Akihabara is essentially the main otaku and moe culture hub of Tokyo, and arguably Japan at large. Obviously, in recent memory, nerd culture has become a widely capitalized upon part of the wider world as a whole, with plenty of conventions like PAX or Comic-Con catering towards exactly that, or even theme parks like Disney World and Universal, arguably. You could walk into Target now and find anime shirts right in the men's section, which would have been unheard of just 10 or 15 years ago. But the special thing about Akihabara is that it's been doing this for years. This sort of thing is just ingrained in Japanese culture and really has been for a long time, especially concerning Akihabara. So with Akihabara now just becoming another grocery store, hardware store, office supplies market, Okabe knows he's really messed up. Okabe is dumbfounded and the crew returns to the lab where Kurisu and Luca are waiting for them. Kurisu and Luca discuss how they wanted to do a beach trip, and Mayuri says she would love a girls-only beach trip. Okabe interjects, saying if it's girls-only, Luca can't possibly attend. This shocks everyone in the room, including Luca, who begins to cry. Okabe is immediately swarmed by several insults and pointed remarks, shaming him for calling Luca a boy. Okabe is baffled and grabs Luca, deciding to pat their crotch to prove he is right, which,
I should go. I'm sorry.
No, you don't. It's gone on long enough. If Luca's really the girl you say she is, then why does she have a... what the hell?
No, stop. Please. Oh, God.
Hold up, the hell going on up in here? He gonna turn around and say...
So, Yeah, in this world line, Luca has become a girl. It really does seem like every email he has sent has created a version of the original Akihabara that is gradually more distant from the one that Okabe once knew. On top of this, Okabe receives a menacing text from an unknown address that states, "I'm watching you," with a picture of red gelatin attached, and not long after this, Daru discovers the lab's computer has been connected to CERN's network for quite some time, implying CERN may have directly hacked their system. This unnerves Okabe, causing him to wonder what CERN would do if they discovered their time machine. After all, if he can simply build a time travel device with a flip phone and a microwave, who knows what they could do if they got their hands on it.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
Okabe is now paranoid CERN is onto them and contemplates their next move. He thinks they should go public with their time travel discoveries. Mayuri, Daru, and Kurisu agree with his decision upon discussing it with them. They decide to host a party that evening before going public the following day, with others like Suzuha and Luca invited also. During the party, Okabe and Mayuri take a moment together to gaze at the night sky from the lab roof. Mayuri notes how there are so many more lab members now, and maybe Okabe won't feel as alone anymore. And maybe Mayuri won't have to be his mad scientist hostage anymore. Maybe now he won't have to feel like he has to cling to the only person he has felt understood or cared about him. Suddenly, the two of them are called back into the lab by Daru, who shows them that on the news, bomb threats have shut down the main train stations around town. Suzuha suddenly asks if Daru managed to hack into CERN, to which he answers yes. This startles Suzuha for some reason, and she runs away. Upon Suzuha leaving, Okabe notices something very odd. The hourglass on Daru's desk has stopped working. Sand no longer flows through it. It's just stopped. And not long after, Mayuri comments on how her pocket watch has ceased to work as well. Then, without any warning whatsoever, out of the blue, 5 armed men wearing masks burst into the lab and point guns at Daru, Kurisu, Okabe, and Mayuri. And with these men, leading them is none other than Moeka. Moeka declares CERN is confiscating their time machine, and Kurisu, Okabe, and Daru will be taken into custody. Okabe warily asks about Mayuri, to which Moeka replies she isn't necessary. And with that, the cruel hands of fate take charge. Moeka aims her gun at Mayuri and aims a point-blank shot directly at her head. In one single moment, Okabe has lost the one thing that he has in his life that gives him any semblance of real human emotion. And it just so happens, in this exact episode, in one of the most pivotal moments of the show, we learn exactly why Mayuri is the one character Okabe seems content to be himself around. Immediately after this horrifying scene, a flashback occurs, showcasing Mayuri and Okabe standing in a graveyard after Mayuri's grandmother has just died. Mayuri had been heartbroken at this loss, but all of a sudden the sky seemed to open up, and a bright light shone through directly on Mayuri. She thought it was her grandmother and held out her hand, wanting to join her. Okabe happened to be standing aside watching this, and he thought he might lose Mayuri, the one true friend he's always had. In a single reflexive moment, he runs up to Mayuri, wraps his arms around her, and claims she is his hostage. In reality, he's just quoting an old mad scientist show they used to watch together, but mentally, this is now who he feels he has to be. This scene is the only time we get a glimpse into Okabe's past throughout the entirety of the show, and it shines so much light into why he is the way he is. Given he's 18 in this show, which is set in 2010, he was likely 8 when he first became fascinated with the concept of John Titor, as discussed before, given that was a phenomenon in 2000 and 2001. So, in short, he was a nerd at a time when nerds weren't considered cool. He probably had no friends in person except for one, Mayuri. Mayuri has been the one constant throughout this show, the one thing Okabe seems to be willing to be normal around. And that was all leading up to this big reveal of why. Mayuri was his only friend for the longest time, and arguably has been his only real friend for most of his life until recently. When Okabe chose to quote the mad scientist's show to Mayuri in an effort to get her to not unalive herself so I don't get demonetized, he also chose to take this entire persona with him in that exact moment, and made it every part of his being in an effort to get Mayuri to stay with him always and never feel like she should leave. Incidentally, this mad scientist persona also became his way of shielding his real self and his insecurities. It became a shell that he could use to be somebody that would draw attention at every turn, both good and bad. To him, at least one way or the other, someone was interacting with him and he didn't feel alone. This is why he clings so hard to the idea of being the mad scientist Hoen Kiyoma, and why the only time he ever drops this facade is with Mayuri. And now, the only person in his life that could ever draw the real Okabe out is lying dead in his arms. Suddenly, Suzuha bursts into the room and single-handedly takes out 5 of the armed men and points her gun at Moeka. She yells at Okabe and Kurisu that the TV downstairs, which has been being used as a lifter to power the phone wave, is on. Okabe realizes what this means and races to the phone wave with Kurisu. They set it up and Okabe prepares the time leap, but not before Kurisu is shot in the back. Okabe realizes this means he needs to leap back in time all the more now to save both Mayuri and Kurisu, and hopes the data they acquired from CERN plus the modifications made to the phone wave will be enough to do that. A huge flash of electricity emits itself around him, and all of a sudden he's in the same room he was in earlier with Daru and Kurisu, right before posting their party. The time leap is a success, but he needs to find Mayuri to ensure she stays safe. He searches all over Akihabara and eventually finds her staring at the stars in the night sky. He tells her they need to flee town and they start to head to the train station together, but are cut off by Moeka and her men even in this world line. They have tracked them. Okabe tells Mayuri to run, but she ends up getting broadsided by Moeka's car and once again dies, no different than before. Okabe is furious and runs back to the lab, choosing a time leap once again. This time, he has Lucas stall Mayuri at the shrine so it'll be easier to locate her. They pair up and take the back roads to this train station to avoid any encounters between Moeka and CERN's agents, but once they get to the train, Mayuri is accidentally pushed from behind and is shoved in front of the oncoming train. Okabe is shocked and horrified. Mayuri has died in front of his eyes 3 separate times now. He vows he won't give up till she is safe no matter what the cost. He time leaps again, and this time, he decides to try and flee town with Mayuri in a taxi. Unfortunately, traffic is at a standstill thanks to the aforementioned bomb threat at the train station. Sadly, this gives Moeka plenty of time to catch up to their cab and fire a shot at Mayuri from the window. Okabe is getting desperate. He concludes the best way to end this is to stop Moeka before she can even get to the lab in the first place. Without telling anyone else, he tracks down Moeka and holds her at gunpoint, questioning her about why she even plans to raid the lab anyway. She explains it's 3 things. 1. Okabe and Kurisu and Daru now all have intimate knowledge of CERN, and CERN has recruited rounders, as they call it, to hunt down people with information they don't want out there. 2. They have a working time machine. And 3. Okabe had planned to go public with their discovery, which would have complicated things a lot for CERN. Suddenly, Okabe is knocked out from behind, and when he comes to, he's stuck in a car with Moeka and some of her other cronies. Moeka leaves the car and heads to the lab, and Okabe manages to break free from his captors and chase her, but again, it's too late. Mayuri is already dead. Okabe time leaps back again, but this time he doesn't know what he'll do. No matter what he does, no matter what path he takes, Mayuri will die. It seems fated to happen at this point. He feels completely helpless. He now is realizing the consequences of messing with time travel and world lines. Just as he is completely breaking down, however, he's greeted by Kurisu. She realizes something is wrong and asks him to tell her. He explains everything, and she determines they need to find the root cause of Mayuri's dying cycle to truly save her. Fortunately enough, the person that can help them with exactly that happens to walk into the lab at that exact moment, Suzuha. It seems Suzuha has a lot of explaining to do for Okabe and the crew. As it turns out, she's been hiding some pretty big secrets from everyone. She reveals the reason why she's been so athletic, and also weirdly on top of knowing technology in certain events, is because she is actually a time traveler herself, from the year 2036. And as a matter of fact, she is the person behind John Teeter and his online posts. John Teeter is none other than Suzuha. Okabe and Kurisu are stunned, but Suzuha continues to explain. She shows them her time machine, which has crash-landed in an abandoned building. Explaining the time machine was how she arrived here, and it was actually a gift from her dad. In the time she comes from, CERN has started World War III, and unfortunately rules over most of the world with an iron fist. She traveled back in time to see if she could stop CERN from ever getting their hands on the technology they used to wreak havoc on humanity, which just so happens to be Okabe's phone wave, and that's why she's here. It seems even just from the very first email Okabe ever sent out about finding Kurisu dead in a closet, that was picked up by CERN, and that immediately put him on their radar. Suzuha wants to go back to 1975 in her time machine as a result and get Okabe IBM 5100 to hack into CERN. However, her time machine is damaged and she cannot make the jump back to that year. It sounds like the only one who could maybe fix it is Suzuha's father, who gifted it to her. Suzuha's father died when she was young, and she never really knew him, but apparently he just so conveniently happens to be in Akihabara around this time of year. Also, as it just so happens, upon bringing the entire lab crew over to examine the time machine, Daru uncovers he can actually fix the machine, and it's uncovered Daru is the one who built it, and by default, he is Suzuha's dad, to everyone's surprise. After fixing her time machine, Suzuha exchanges a tearful goodbye before jumping back to 1975. Later that day, Mr. Braun visits Okabe with a letter from Suzuha, which was written 10 years ago but told to be given to Okabe on this exact day. As it turns out, Suzuha lived out the rest of her days starting from 1975, but eventually died of illness. It seems like she may have accomplished her mission in saving Mayuri, however, since by the usual time Mayuri dies, usually in every other world line rolls around, she's still alive. Unfortunately, it seems like their actions have only delayed Mayuri's death, since shortly after this, Barandra agents appear again and shoot Mayuri. After time leaping again and theorizing with Kurisu, Okabe concludes that he has to undo all previously sent D-mails in reverse order to bring them back to a world line where they have the IBN 5100 and CERN can't detect any D-mails from being sent out. The first one to get undone is Ferris's D-mail. As stated before, somehow her D-mail brought her dad back, but also revamped Akihabara into a non-nerdy wasteland. Okabe managed to track down Ferris, who is at the local convention center, having just won a Rynet championship. Unfortunately, it seems like a group of rival players are quite literally on her tail and intend to kidnap her. Okabe and Ferris manage to evade the other Rynet players, and Okabe attempts to get Ferris to remember the previous world line, where Akihabara was an otaku paradise, so she can also remember sending the D-mail as well. He brings her to the exact spot where her maid cafe, Queen May's, used to stand, and miraculously this appears to do the trick. All the memories of being the queen of the maid cafe and single-handedly starting Akihabara's otaku culture come flooding back to her. She realizes she's been living two lives and one of them is a lie. Really enough, this connects her even more to Okabe and connects him more to her, because really they're both living a lie. Okabe is living a lie by putting on his mad scientist facade when really that's not even who he is at all. Ferris is living a lie by choosing to be in a world where her dad never died, and he was able to see her grow up. But really, that's just not reality for either of them, and now they both understand this. Ferris makes the tough decision to let Okabe delete her D-mail, knowing this will revert her back to the timeline where her dad is dead, but Mayuri will live. Okabe deletes the D-mail and is shifted to a previous world line once again. He doesn't have the means to save Mayuri just yet, however. He has to get Luca to undo her D-mail. Upon speaking with Luca, she agrees to do so, but only if Okabe goes on a date with her. Okabe is immediately overwhelmed in the most hilarious way possible, since to him, dating is the one science he can't crack. He knows nothing about how to go about it, or where he should go with Luca, or what to even say. He compares himself to Isaac Newton, to which Kurisu has a pretty cutting remark.
My IQ is on par with Sir Isaac Newton, and like his august self, I have no use for the fair sex. Hoin Kyoma is dedicated to higher purposes than these ridiculous flights of fancy.
Yes, we get it. You're a genius, as dedicated to science as you are to virginity.
Also, it's worth noting that Sir Isaac Newton was historically confirmed to be autistic. I've talked about this before, and this is actually a big part of why I wanted to do this video, but to me, Okabe is a fantastic and surprisingly accurate example of an autistic coded character in media. He is awkward, but in a realistic way. He's not acting like a robot that's just spewing out AI-generated information when speaking to it. He's a real person who just so happens to default to talking about science and chemistry when he can't be sure how to start a conversation with someone. A lot of these struggles are relatable for autistic people like me. It's very easy for us to get nervous when trying to make conversation, and we can easily just end up defaulting to talking about hyperfixations or things we love. Either that, we might just freeze up and get overstimulated. Thankfully, I am fortunate to have people in my life who just like me for who I am, an autistic otter, an aut with autism. And Okabe has the exact same thing. The people who he christens members of the lab are the people who see him for who he is and love him just for that. That's what really matters in life. Luca ends up enjoying their date for this exact reason. She just likes him for who he is. She gives him her mom's pager number, and Okabe is able to undo Luca's D-mail as well. Now only one is left, Moeka's. Okabe tracks Moeka to her apartment where he uncovers she has unalived herself thanks to not receiving a text from someone known as FB. He time leaps back to before she unalived herself and stops her from doing so, restraining her and demanding to know what D-mail she sent and where the IBN 5100 is. She eventually concedes that the IBN 5100 is in a coin locker somewhere, waiting to be picked up by FB. And as it turns out, FB is none other than Mr. Braun, Okabe's own rent manager and the owner of the CRT shop, has been around her this whole time and has been manipulating Moeka via text. Braun shoots Moeka to avoid any info leaking out and then shoots himself too, since he knows if CERN found out what happened here, they would kidnap his daughter to torture him. With Moeka and Braun now out of the picture, Okabe takes Braun's phone and sends a text to Moeka in the past as FB, thereby making it so she won't pursue the IBN 5100. This sends Okabe to yet another world line, and now it seems all there is to do is hack into CERN and delete all the data that flagged the lab in the first place. Kurisu casually asks what the first D-mail Okabe ever sent was. Okabe realizes in horror that that was the D-mail they sent to Daru about finding Kurisu dead, and also the same D-mail that prevented her death. He realizes by finalizing the undoing of their past actions, that means Mayuri will stay alive and CERN will be destroyed, but Kurisu will die in Mayuri's place. No matter what he does, someone he loves will die. And this is the realization he came to over the past few episodes. He does love Kurisu. While they both bicker constantly about science and fate, they do truly care about each other. Kurisu has consistently stood by Okabe's side throughout everything and has been there to support him and help save Mayuri. And he doesn't want to see someone else he cares about die again. He tells Daru to call off the hacking for now and goes up to the lab roof, where he lays down and stares at the sky. He feels completely powerless once again. Kurisu comes up to check on him and teases him about how the mad scientist Hoin Kiyoma should be out executing his master plan, not just lying around, to which he says,
Evil geniuses mock the fuzz.
I'm not an evil genius! Hoin Kiyoma? Who gives a damn about him? He's fiction.
Absolutely genius. For once, Okabe shows his vulnerable side and who he truly is to someone other than Mayuri. This proves even more now that he trusts Kurisu with his life and he truly respects and loves her now. He chooses to explain to Kurisu what will happen if they go through with it and that she will die. She is shocked but chooses to accept her fate, realizing Will saved Mayuri and really, this is what the original world line was, and it should have always stayed that way. Okabe, however, won't accept this. He runs back to the lab and prepares the phone wave. He is about to time leap once again, but Kurisu races in and stops him. She says this is her choice and nothing will change that. Okabe realizes she's serious and falls into despair. To me, this scene between Okabe and Kurisu is the single best scene in the entire show, and that's saying a lot given how many well-executed moments this show has. I've also talked about this in a previous video, specifically my video on voice acting, but this is a standout moment from any English anime dub in my opinion. J. Michael Tatum and Trina Nishimura just kill this scene. It really feels like two people that are emotionally strained but are finally confessing their love for one another. Because really, Kurisu has always loved Okabe too. He has made her not feel alone in the strangest of ways, and he shares her love for science and theories. They always did love each other, they just never had the strength to say it to each other until now. Okabe asks Kurisu if this is how she really feels about him, and she has him close her eyes, and they share their first kiss with each other, and their last. Okabe then makes the most difficult choice he's had to make yet, deletes all the data they had gleaned from CERN, and sends himself, Mayuri, and Daru back to the very first world line, and also sends Kurisu back to world line, where she is dead. Okabe seems to be accepting of their new future since really this is the future Kurisu would have wanted even if she can't share it with him. Then out of the blue, something amazing occurs. Suzuha shows up in her time machine and seeks out Okabe directly. As it turns out, Suzuha, while on a different world line than the one she died on, has realized the true way to end World War III in her future is to save Kurisu in addition to Mayuri. She offers to take Okabe back in her time machine to the day Kurisu died to save her and set everything back to a perfect world line. Okabe agrees and travels back to the roof of the building with Suzuha. Suzuha gives him a few rules to abide by while they figure out how to save Kurisu. He can't let himself be seen by his past self to avoid a paradox, but he also can't tell Kurisu if she dies in the future, for the same reason. He manages to find the closet where he found her stabbed to begin with, and stakes it out. Kurisu walks by after a little bit, holding her time travel thesis. Dr. Nakabachi, from the original lecture Okabe attended, walks by as well, and as it turns out, he is actually Kurisu's father. Kurisu tries to show him her thesis and says they can publish it together to get his credit back. Nakabachi, however, wants to take the thesis and publish it under his own name to steal credit from Kurisu. Kurisu protests, but he slaps her and is about to strangle her until Okabe emerges from his hiding place and tackles Nakabachi. Nakabachi pulls out a pocket knife and tries to stab Okabe, but Okabe knocks the knife away from him and grabs it. Nakabachi turns his attention back to Kurisu and grabs a nearby screwdriver to try and stab Kurisu, but Okabe rushes him with the knife. However, his aim is off and he stabs Kurisu instead. Okabe is horrified at what he's done and returns to the president of the Suzuha, telling her and Mayuri he can't do it. Mayuri, seeing him like this, slaps Okabe and tells him to pull it together, much like Kurisu did when she found out Mayuri was dying. She and Kurisu really do care about him, and truly care about each other's lives too. Okabe musters up his courage and decides to hop back one more time to see if he can save Kurisu. He figures out he needs to make it look like Kurisu was murdered to his past self, but keep her alive. This means warding off Dr. Nakabachi, knocking Kurisu unconscious, and then making it appear as though there is blood all around her to fool his past self. Okabe, being the madman he is, chooses the most unconventional method. He goads Nakabachi into stabbing him, and then threatens him with the knife still embedded in his gut, scaring Nakabachi off. He then tasers Kurisu and lets just enough blood flow out to make it seem like it's Kurisu's. Okabe's in major pain, but he seems to have accomplished his mission. He watches from a distance as his past self relives the moment he himself lived 3 weeks ago. Okabe travels back to the present, a new present. No CERN, Mayuri is alive, and now Kurisu is alive too. He has created a perfect loop. Okabe encounters Kurisu in the midst of a busy day in Akihabara. Now that he has fixed the world lines, the memories she carried through each of them have come back to her, including the one of their first kiss and the knowledge of their love for each other. This, as Okabe says, is the choice of Steins Gate, the choice of their future they now share together. Steins Gate is, to this day, a testament of what anime can be. It is considered to be a shining example within the medium, and as stated before, it is often regarded as one of the greatest anime of all time. It's able to appeal to people who don't even traditionally like anime thanks to its incredibly human, grounded themes and setting in just a normal area of Tokyo, well, as normal as Akihabara can get anyway. The characters are all endearing in their own ways, and to me, this show features the best protagonist and best deuteragonist in all of anime, and probably the best anime couple too. Okabe, as discussed before, is not only a fantastic autistic coded character, and is able to resonate with people on the spectrum like me as a result, but he also has very human flaws and a very natural desire to act larger than life and conceal who he really is to draw attention. This is definitely more a neurodivergent thing to do, but it can happen to neurotypical people as well. Despite his claims to be a mad scientist to try and keep Mayuri at his side, he is ultimately a hero willing to risk his life for those he loves. His arc over the course of the show is incredible, and Kurisu is the perfect woman to pair with him as a result. She is much more put together than he is, and also much less immature, but her being with him is the perfect foil for him. And that's ultimately what endears them to each other. Opposites truly do attract. The show itself is honestly incredibly rewatchable from a narrative standpoint, given the loop it functions on. Every time I've rewatched this show, I've noticed something new just thanks to the very nature of the story. To me, that is the mark of a masterfully told narrative. The very philosophy of the show expands on this idea of a branching world line and time travel, creating parallel timelines by combining ideas of both fatalism and existentialism. For those unaware, fatalism is the idea that some outside force, be it a deity or just the nature of the universe itself, makes it so that some events are simply unavoidable. And existentialism is more or less the idea that your choices can even change seemingly fated to happen circumstances. To give a solid outside example to explain both schools of thought, take a look at how canon events are addressed by Miguel O'Hara in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. In that movie, Miguel explains canon events are things that are meant to happen in any given universe that a Spider-Man exists in and should stay that way. He believes some things are just destined to happen, such as Gwen Stacy's dad becoming captain and then dying shortly afterward. However, this idea is proved false when Gwen's dad quits the police force, thus not becoming captain and thus not dying. That is an example of existentialism. Captain Stacy's choice to step down altered the canon event and saved his life. Steins Gate shows both philosophies in a genius way, with things like Mayuri's death seemingly being inevitable, representing the fatalism side of things, whereas Okabe being able to change Kurisu's fate being seen as existentialism. It is masterfully shown, but at the end of the day, what is my personal takeaway? Why do I love this show so much? As I discussed before, Okabe is a fantastic autistic coded character in anime, and I do resonate with those aspects of him. But also, if you asked anyone if they had a moment that they would want to travel back in time to and change with knowledge they now have in the future, they would likely say yes. For me, if you had asked me that years ago, I would have said quite a few things. For moments where I was taken advantage of as a neurodivergent person, to moments where I was gaslit by others in my life, to moments where I would just simply wish I had knowledge I had attained in the future. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't go back and change those moments. Did they suck? Were they difficult to get through? Did they make me incredibly sad? Yes, yes, and yes. But at the end of the day, those moments made me who I am today. And I wouldn't change that for the world. I'm proud of who I am today. Those past moments were the choice of Steins Gate, and I'm here in my present, making my own choice to be proud of who I am in the current day. Thank you to everyone who has helped me become who I am today. I'm proud to have my own secret lab of members who always cheer me on. Help me be the best version of myself. L. Psi Congru. End transmission. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't like it, give it a like anyway. Obviously, this is a monster of a video to put out, so if you liked it, definitely subscribe too. And once again, if you want to see much longer videos like this more often, get this video to 45 likes, like I said at the very start. Also, if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do that as well. That is in the description below. You get your name in the credits of every video, and you also get early access to my videos too. Sounds like something you'd like. Definitely consider supporting me over there. Every little bit helps. Once again, a big thank you to everyone that's just been supporting me as I put out this video and put a lot of time into producing it. This was the longest production time I think I've ever had for a video, but I'm very happy with how it turned out overall. Once again, do all the algorithm pleasing things like liking, subscribing, sharing with a friend if you like this video. You can also check out all my socials down below. I am on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, pretty much everything. I also have a Discord where you can chat with me offline if you'd like, or just stalk whatever game I'm playing on Steam for whatever reason. You can also check out my Letterboxd. That's where I upload full reviews for each of my movies or shows I plan on reviewing. But for now, I've been Noah the Otter, and I'll see you on the other side. Now I'm gonna go sleep because this video took a long time to put out.